These are the three areas under ancient healing. We have diets like ketosis and cellular healing diet, but we're going to focus on these two, fasting and diet variation. Under fasting, we have two different types of fasts, block and intermittent. But this is what Hippocrates says: our food should be our medicine should be our food, but to eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness. You know, it was funny because my grandmother always said, because you know the starve the cold, starve the fever, feed the cold. She said, no, you starve both. And that was her experience. My wise grandmother from Italy said you starve both. And that's exactly right. Because one of the things that you're going to learn about fasting, it is the most natural way of healing. Do you know that animals fast instinctively when they're sick or hurt? Did you know that? They don't eat. There's 3 phases to fasting. And I like to say this because, right, sorry. Okay, right there. 3 phases to fasting, because there's a lot of myths about fasting, and we're going to talk about a lot of those, but a shift from food, energy to fat is the first phase, and that can take hours, that's really important, to days. And I'm going to tell you this right now, in sick people, it could take months, and that's a problem. But through block fasting, we can speed that up, that's for sure. But ketosis begins in phase 2. This is when you are what we like to call fat adapted. This can last for months to years, where literally you can function in a fast for years, believe it or not, for years. Imagine that. Full protein sparing mode occurs during this time. So meaning that your body wants to survive, so it spares its protein, which is your what? Your muscle. I mean, on average, most of you in the room can easily fast 40 to 50 days. No problem. If you read Viktor Frankl's book, this is a really cool thing. One of the things that he said in his book, unknowingly, was the fact that in the death camp, he said we were starving, they didn't have food. He said, but one of the amazing thing was, because he said there was all these opposite things that they, that they learned, and this is one of them, he said, is that all the diseases like that people complained about in the beginning, all their aches, their pains, different things, disappeared. You would think that things would become worse, but it appeared that many of us in many ways became healthier. He didn't understand what was happening. So the chronic conditions of arthritis and different things literally cleared up as part of their fast. Now, of course, they ended up entering the terminal phase at one point, right? They went beyond it. But in an interim, they actually became healthier. We have block fasting and daily fasting. So just as an education right up front, daily fasting, 16 to 24 hours between dinner and breakfast, is a typical daily fast, intermittent fast. Block fasts are typically, they can be longer, but 4 to 10 day fasts with either stock, whey water, or just plain water. Either way, we know this in the studies. We get an average increase in growth hormone, 1,300% in women, 2,000% in men. Now, even more importantly, in these fasting states, we know that hormone sensitivity increases dramatically. That's a very, very important thing. Now, it doesn't happen right away in the sick, and that's why we have strategies. But the hormone sensitivity is key because today people are sick and don't feel well because of cellular inflammation, and you've seen me draw it many times. Because of cellular inflammation, oh, you poor people. I don't know. We'll see. On every cell are these integral membrane proteins, aka hormone receptors, vitamin receptors, period. And these receptors, when blunted with inflammation, most likely driven by insulin and glucose, elevated spikes of insulin and glucose, toxins, of course. All the bad fats that people are eating and bad ratios drive this inflammation. Also in the mitochondria, we make the precious ATP. This membrane inflames, affecting the cell energy. You know the picture, you know it well. But the point is we need to get this hormone sensitivity right, even to change our gene expression. So intermittent fasting is a critical component. Matter of fact, I will say this. It may be the strongest tool that you have in all your tools to downregulate inflammation and upregulate that sensitivity so you can get the job done. Intermittent fasting daily, the how-to. It's simple. Skip breakfast every day. I know. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? And we've been taught that. But it's not the most important meal of the day. Matter of fact, most ancient cultures all through history never, ever eat breakfast and never did. Matter of fact, even when you go to Europe, it's the continental breakfast, right? To us Americans, we go, this is breakfast? I know I did when I first went to Europe. I was like, really? I was like, you all eat this? You'll see them have some wine with breakfast, but typically it's not without any food, maybe a little bit of that something, you know? I mean, I was just stunned by that. So we have the first step. For most Americans, we teach this. Tell them just to go 3 meals a day. Now, here's what your patients are going to tell you. Oh, I only eat 3 meals a day. No, they don't. No, they don't. They eat, every time they pass the nut thing, they eat nuts, right? This was my conversation with Warren one time. He's like, no, I'm only eating 2 meals a day, but yet, you know, it was nuts, it was this, it was that. That's most people. They don't consider this food or the nuts, they don't consider that meals, but that's what they're doing all day long. Many of you. It's the fastest way to death is eating more often. And yes, that little bar that you carry around, they pull out their little bar, that's death. It is. If you know anything about anti-aging or aging slower, you must control insulin spikes. Every time you eat those nuts, the salad, whatever it is, you get a glucose and insulin spike. Did you know that? Every time. So the key is controlling those spikes. The only real way to do it is by eating less often. And that's really where the magic comes in. So what I love to do is I eat a small, fatty protein meal in the day, and I eat a huge dinner. This is why I love intermittent fasting. Studies show autolysis and autophagy start within 18 to 24 hours of a fast. Okay, what that means is that your body starts getting rid of the crap. Those number 3 cells and number 6s, it will take those first. Those bad mitochondria, yep, it starts to wipe them out. And we have that happen slowly, but studies show that autophagy starts at 18 and 24 hours. You dramatically increase hormone sensitivity. I already told you that your growth hormone surges. Studies show 180% increase in testosterone, and most importantly, you become more sensitive to it. My own findings with intermittent fasting, even out of ketosis. Listen, this is cool. Even when I'm not in ketosis, meaning that I'm probably doing maybe 100, 150 grams of carbs a day, which, by the way, when you're intermittent fasting is very difficult. It is. It becomes more hard to take in that many carbs. So, but here's the cool thing. In the morning, my glucose and ketones, like you're going to have the pleasure of doing tomorrow, are not in ketosis, meaning my ketone number is below 0.5. To be in ketosis, you have to be above 0.5, okay? I'm below it. Let's say I'm 0.2, 0.3. By the afternoon, because now I've got my body so efficient at using fat, by the afternoon, my ketones are above 0.5, let's say 0.7. So even though I'm not in ketosis, I'm getting the benefits of ketones, which you're going to learn tonight is really, really important. Dr. Dom's studies are showing that these ketones turn off bad genes. We already talked about how important that is. These ketones not only change DNA, but these ketones make you more hormone sensitive. They fix things that we never thought could be fixed, like the brain. Your body prefers them for energy. It downregulates inflammation. So we know that if we can benefit from that every day, that's pretty cool. So that's what I love about intermittent fasting. No doubt, multiple studies show that it extends your life. It really does. So to benefit from it daily, even without being in ketosis, that's one of the cool things that happens with intermittent fasting. That won't happen with you right away. But the longer you do this, the more efficient your cells become. My wife, when she first started intermittent fasting, she was hungry all the time. She wasn't breaking through into just her cells really understanding how to use fat more efficiently. So really cool. That's the study showing the 13 to 2,000% growth hormone increase in just a 24-hour fast. Fasting rules. The key for weight loss and longevity. The effects of intermittent fasting. 20 hours of water fasting was enough to increase insulin sensitivity. That's the key to weight loss. That's the key to most diseases right there. So just a 24-hour fasting. Imagine if you did it every day. Imagine if you did it every day. When we know that insulin and glucose are why most people do not feel well, and yet you have this tool, intermittent fasting, going just 20 hours without food. And folks, we're talking about waking up, let's say you eat at 7 o'clock at night, so 7 to 7 this morning, I've been fasting 12 hours. Add another 5 onto that, I've been fasting 17. Another 3, I've been fasting 20. Once your body and cells become so efficient, it's so easy that what you'll find is that your brain works the best when you're not eating. The moment you eat food, your body starts to go into a parasympathetic mode. That's why most ancient cultures ate their biggest meals at night, because it just drives the parasympathetic and sympathetic comes down. But sympathetic, when you're not eating all day, makes you more alert, makes you ready, all ready to go, high energy. That's why humans are really nocturnal eaters. I agree, though. You don't want to eat too late at night. Give it 3 or 4 hours. Let that food get out of the process of that part of the first part of digestion. That's where it requires the most energy. Intermittent fasting prevents type 1 diabetes. This study showed how it changes the gene expression. It literally changes these genes like the SIRT1 and the SIRT2, which really determine how long you live and how healthy you live. So this study showed intermittent fasting changes it. That's huge. What about muscle loss? Intermittent fasting was more effective for muscle retention with weight loss than was straight caloric restriction. Once again, don't eat less, eat what? That's the key. That's the magic. Because if you just try to eat less, what will happen to your body? Slows down, thinks it's starving. It can't be done. But the world believes it can. Because we talk about the studies. If you want to live longer, you'll hear it. People will say there is nothing that holds up with anti-aging except what? Caloric restriction. So you see what's in their head? Caloric restriction, caloric restriction. No. The way the ancient cultures are doing it in living longer is they're not eating less, they're eating what? We got it wrong. The message is wrong. One of my articles about this went out, and mistakenly it said, eat less and live longer. I was like, no. It's eat less. Don't eat less. Eat less often and live longer. Yes. But you know what? It was probably a better title anyway because people resonated to that. Oh, cool. Yeah, this is what I know. And then they realize it's not true. It's a lie. Don't believe it. So intermittent fasting retains muscle. Big myth. Right? One of the big myths is that we lose our muscle. We lose our muscle. Isn't that a myth about fasting? Yeah, we're going to bust that here in a second. We don't lose our muscle. We lose fat. Another myth is that, fasting, it can create yo-yo diets. No. It doesn't at all. Nothing could be further from the truth. Gaining muscle, that's my son Daniel. Intermittent fasting and exercise, when done together, has the greatest hormone optimization and sensitivity occurred. So when we put these two things together, we really can force the hormones, which I love to call hormone optimization. So Daniel and I, and Marilee, we exercise in the morning on an empty stomach. The old days, I believe this too. We would run back from the gym, and within that 30-minute window, we would get our stuff in, right? Now, you couldn't make Daniel eat food right after that workout because he knows he's taking that growth hormone rise and running with it, right? The moment you eat, you screw that up, right? The moment you eat, you start to affect that. So you want to take that workout on the empty stomach, drive that hormone sensitivity, and ride that pony. Now again, most of you at first are going to go, oh I'm starving, I want to eat. You will become more efficient, and you'll become more efficient because your cells are adapting. Intermittent fasting in breast cancer, a prolonged nightly fast. That's called intermittent fasting, folks. So here's what they found. Fasting less than 13 hours per night was associated with an increase in breast cancer reoccurrence versus 13 or more hours per night. So when they fasted people more than 13 hours, magic happened. All their inflammation markers went down, lowered HbA1c. It affected their sleep. They actually went into the deeper delta sleep more often. So this is a huge thing. So just fasting above 13 hours gave a dramatic increase. And with every 2-hour increase, they saw even exponential results. Every 2-hour increase. So that's very important. Bad cells cannot adapt. Say that. Bad cells. Really important, because the reason we're talking about this is so we can change our cells. We want to keep, instead of making 3s, duplicating 3s, we want to make 8s, duplicating 8s, or 10s, 10s. Bad cells don't adapt. So what we see here is this occurred in 4 to 10 day block fasts as well as just 18, 24-hour fasts. Matter of fact, most of the autophagy, as they call it, happens in that first day. 2016 Nobel Prize winner, guess what it was on? Proving autophagy, meaning your body's eating the bad cells, bad mitochondria are dying, you're making better ones. This proves that fasting is good for your health, because he says this happens in fasting states. And that's how we can take advantage of the most miraculous thing our innate intelligence does. And that's that it gets rid of the bad stuff. And innate intelligence takes over, and we end up with better and better cells. Folks, listen, it doesn't happen in one fast. That's why my goal is to teach my patients the art and the science of fasting. Do you get that? Many of you make the mistake. Well, I fasted. I didn't feel well. I fasted, and they're not healthy yet. No. With every fast, you get more autophagy. All the scientists are showing this. With every fast, your mitochondria get better, stronger. It is, in fact, mitochondrial therapy. Science discovers that fasting triggers stem cell regeneration. It's all through the science, and yet so few are doing it. Do you understand? We are the only group right now in America, on the planet, that as a whole are putting this all together in a multi-therapeutic approach. Joe Mercola, who is dying to come to this seminar, is coming out of his skin knowing that there is a group of people like us. 5 reasons why fasting increases lifespan. There you go. Turns on longevity genes. I showed you the study. Turns off inflammation genes. Showed you that study. No glucose and insulin spikes. Showed you that. Bad cells do not adapt. We looked at that. Elevated ketones burn clean. Less inflammation. Heal the brain and change DNA for better. You just saw that. It activates stem cells and healing. I showed you that study. Man, I'm telling you, we have been doing this as a group forever. It's just now that you're starting to hear about intermittent fasting. It's just now. It's amazing. You know, this has been something that I've been excited about and doing for years, and I can tell you this. As my healthy side of my life, once I got my life back, which cellular detox gave me that back, multiple brain phases gave me my life back. However, I could say this, nothing has been more powerful in my healthy life than when I started intermittent fasting. I'm telling you, it's allowed me as a 51-year-old to keep up with an 18-year-old built like that, jacked young man. You know, and he is ahead of me, but I can tell you, you know, I am as lean today as I have ever been. even as a teenager. I was never that lean because I didn't know this. He knows this. But I am leaner today as a 51-year-old than any time in my life. And that is intermittent fasting and the power of it. When I'm not eating, my body is utilizing about 50 to 80,000 calories stored, ready to go. There it is, in the form of fat. Yes, fat in between your organs, etc. Your body has to just start to get efficient enough to tap into it. It's there. What about block fasting? Okay, we've talked a lot about intermittent fasting, but let's take a look at this. In general, a 7-day water fast, water-only fast, done once per year. I'm quoting Thomas Seyfried. He is, by the way, the author of Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. Okay, brilliant guy. I've had some time with Thomas. Amazing guy. I want to get him at our next seminar. But he said, if you just did one 7-day water fast a year, it was sufficient for the body to consume through what? Bad tissue, autophagy, precancerous tissue. And he talked about how that extends your life. Just one fast a year, he talked about in his book, how life extending it is. And the reason it happens is because of the autophagy, right? So Seyfried says that several shorter fasts, 4-day fasts, would be just as effective. That's what we do. So the first time, most people can't go 7 or 10 days, but we do these shorter block fasts. So note this, that even a beef stock fast, to his surprise, the glucose fell enough to be in what we're going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, but the target range. So even beef stock, not just water, can get the glucose down enough to go through autophagy, and that's been a question. Now, some argue that water fasting is superior, but starting with a beef stock fast can be very, very effective. Multiple block fasts. Now, look, this is important. Multiple block fasts for breakthrough. Those who struggle to control glucose and insulin, that's who we do multiple fasting with, meaning that you're going to get these patients who you can't get their glucose and insulin to drop. And multiple block fast is the answer. Not losing weight, even in ketosis or the perfect diet. Multiple block fasting is the answer. Hormone dysregulation of any type, multiple block fasting. Low cellular energy, multiple block fasting. Autoimmune, study after study, multiple fasts. Cancer, Seyfried's work, it's amazing because what they found is that multiple shorter fasts, and he has a whole different name for it than we do, actually worked the best. And there's a reason for that. When we get into diet variation, I'll show you that. Oscar the dog. I was talking in a small think tank of brilliant people. I was definitely not the smartest guy in the room. I would argue I was probably the lowest on the totem pole. However, because of the clinical experience that we have here, I was able to share some things with them that had them captivated. In Seyfried, finally, because there was resistance with some of the colleagues, scientists, some of them, Seyfried stood up and said, Dan's right. Here's why. And he said, back in the early 1900s, there was a study on Oscar the dog, and it became pretty famous. But one of the things that came out of the study with these dogs is that multiple fasts, the dogs became more and more efficient, able to go into a fasting state like that, whereas even the ones that struggled couldn't. So he said, that's in the literature. And then let me tell you what we're finding with our cancer patients. So multiple fasts works, whether it's once a month, once every other month, a fast every quarter. Every fast, they become more efficient. Did you hear that? Every fast, what happens? That's right. So in that study, Oscar's study, listen to this. They were taking these poor dogs. What was the third phase of fasting? What was it? Death. Remember, it was the primordial rise, right? It was the premortal rise, they call it. The premortal rise. They couldn't get Oscar into the premortal rise. It wouldn't happen. After 101 days, little Oscar was still jumping in and out of his cage. He was like, no problem. Matter of fact, what happened with Oscar was amazing because Oscar sucked as a faster at first. He was not good. And Oscar became this efficient faster that they finally, out of, humane reasons, stopped the fast. They couldn't kill him. With every fast, the dogs became more efficient. They grew stronger and stronger. So, Oscar was amazing. It was, they stopped the fast, by the way. Poor Oscar had to go 170 days to convince him, I'm not dying. It's like, I am Viktor Frankl. I have a great hope to live, and you will not kill me. So fasting fixes the gut barrier, and this is important. Remember the stool, right? I put these fasts in the category of ancient healing, which is really the category of fixing the gut. Because my point is this: to truly fix a gut today, this is what you need to do. You have to be doing these things. It's not so simple to just give bacteria. I wish it were so simple, but it's not. Study after study shows us why these fasts work to fix the gut. Why? No doubt. And you see, it also applies what? To the DNA, turning off bad genes. We know that during these fasts, that genes get turned on and off that stop inflammation in the gut. So we turn on these genes that actually can reduce inflammation. This is key. This is key. So, what about this guy? This guy, he weighed 456 pounds. He water fasted for 382 days. By the way, the length of somebody's fast is absolutely determined by the amount of tissue. So Dr. Pompa is not going to be able to go that long. I don't know. We should find out. I might die around 40 days. I don't know. But no doubt, 382 days. Here's the amazing part. He too had trouble in the beginning. Everything normalized. All his nutrition markers remained normal. Electrolytes eventually normalized because he had some instability in the beginning. Depression lifted, neurotransmitters, all hormones became normal. Google the guy. It's all out there. So basically what they're saying is, could we just take people who are depressed and have all types of psychological problems and fast them? The answer is yes. It's like dogs fast and animals fast intuitively to heal. We know the brain heals that quickly, that you can lift people out of a depressed state. So many studies are showing this. It's amazing. So depressed people, eat 6 meals a day, and you will become depressed. Eat 6 meals a day, you will become diabetic. You will trigger your gene of your genetic weakness. I promise you. And again, I'm not talking about meals. I'm talking about eating handfuls of nuts throughout the day, or that bar that people carry. The athletes are the worst. They're the worst of all. Fasting with ketosis. Restriction is key. You heard the scientist on the brain say restriction. He used that word restriction. But you have to understand, there's restriction to most people means what? Less. Thank you. Right. That's not really what it is. The key is doing it with fasting and ketosis. That's the best restriction. So this is important. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow. When you go into ketosis, when you become a fat burner, you become adapted. You release this right here. Most of us do. Cholecystokinin is in response. You know what it does? It takes away your appetite. How many of you have went into ketosis and you were still hungry? How many of you? Any of you? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Maybe 20 of you in the room. Okay, it happens because you didn't release cholecystokinin. So your brain didn't get the message to slow it down. So those people are in great danger of gaining fat, gaining weight, and not getting the benefit of the ketosis, ketotic state, or the intermittent fast. So your body should release it. The key is combining fasting, either intermittent, daily, or block with ketosis. Because if no restriction, eating less often, there is no drop in glucose and insulin, and you don't get the results. Matter of fact, one of the things that Seyfried showed is that if you don't decrease the glucose, your body doesn't get the benefit of the ketones. Did you hear that? So therefore, these people that are saying, hey, my ketones are 1.3, they're not getting the benefit if their glucose isn't heading down. So that's why we want to see glucose what? And ketones what? That's right. Then you're getting the benefit of the ketones, right? So remember, don't eat less. Eat what? Absolutely. And that's the key. So it's not just ketosis. Study after study showing the restriction's the key. Look, no weight loss or adaptation in ketosis. Yes, too much protein. Yes, maybe too many carbs, and everyone's genetically different, but they may need more restriction because that's the key. Look, is being in ketosis enough? According to these studies, it is not enough to be just in ketosis, but caloric restriction is a must to decrease glucose. So to decrease the glucose, you have to restrict. Again, most people think eat less, not what we're talking about. If no restriction nor drop in glucose, ketones will not be used. They get flushed out in the urine. In human and mouse studies, there was no significant weight loss without restriction. Did you hear that? So when they took fat mice, overweight mice, to get the weight loss, ketosis wasn't it. They had to add the restriction into it. You getting that? So tomorrow, take that thought when we talk about ketosis, because you need the restriction, and the way to get the restriction is not eating less, it's what? I think you got it. I hope. In Seyfried's work and others, you see my studies. I always cite my studies. There were no anti-cancer and anti-tumor effects without the restriction. Glucose has to go low, ketones have to go high for the tumors to shrink. Got it? And so does your fat. So to lose this, you can't just go into ketosis. People go, I'm in ketosis. I'm 1.3. I'm burning fat. Why aren't I losing weight? That is why. It may take time because restriction fixes the mitochondria. Restriction causes the mitochondria to adapt. Restriction causes autophagy, autolytic behavior, which causes us to make better mitochondria, better cells, more efficient, fat-burning machines, but it takes the restriction. So again, ketosis not enough without the restriction that we get from the fasting.